Michael and Sharon. Now, Michael, we have another guest with us.
We certainly do. Bulgarian-born engineer turned astrologer Lubomir Dimitrov. That's correct.
That's correct.
Fantastic. Believes that astrology is a balanced science. He says that it keeps a close connection with the divine without losing its scientific grounds and should not be regarded simply as a prediction tool. So it goes without saying, of course, Lubomir, welcome to Group. I bet this is your first time with us. Welcome to the station. It's where we're very glad to have you with us here. Now, you were an engineer and now you're an astrologer?
I'm still an engineer. I've got a master's degree in engineering. I have graduated in Russia. I'm born in Bulgaria, as you know. I graduated in Russia, so I've been there for 5 years. After that, I went and I worked in Malta for another 5 years. Been in Italy, and now I'm in Australia for 8 years.
Well, there you go. So, how does an engineer? Because I guess you tend to picture engineers as a very literal, very I guess like it says, scientific people. Very how does an engineer being an astrologer?
Well, I think I'm one of the kind in Australia at the moment, really. I turned myself into an astrologer just by my own will. What happened is about 15 years ago, I started studying astrology just by interest, by curiosity.
Yeah.
That is the time when I bought my first book, which was Parker's Astrology, which actually teaches you how to draw up your charts and how to calculate aspects between planets and go much more in depth than what we can read in the tabloid newspapers today. Yeah. And so that really ignited my interest. And as I said, I'm a scientist and I don't take things for granted. So before I actually accept something, I have to have a proof that it actually works. And because for many, many years I've been doing the charts of hundreds and hundreds of people, eventually I have convinced 100% that astrology works. If you just put the time to actually study it, it actually works. What happened is initially it was just like from interest, people coming to me and they were saying, Lubomir, can you just make us our chart, or can you just tell us this and that? And I was doing it just for friends and family, but then the word started spreading around. And what happened is about 3-4 years ago, I had so many people coming to me that I said, I cannot do this anymore like this because I don't have time to do it. So what I decided to do is I did a little bit of a marketing around Perth. I saw that there are not so many professional engineers over here, and I hired an office in the very center of the city on Stirling Street, next to Sunday Times. That's where my office is. And I turned astrology into my profession, and I turned engineering science into my hobby. So I reversed the thing.
Well, that's cool.
That's what I'm doing at the moment. I still can lecture 1 or 2 days in a week in TAFE or in universities like Murdoch University, where I teach them science and data communications and all these things. But most of the time, like 6 days of the week, especially now around Conscious Living Expo, I'm doing full-on just astrology, basically.
Okay. Now, we'll be right back on the Monday Bite with Michael and Sharon. It is just before 11:30, so stick around for more with Lubomir. Monday Bite with Sharon and Michael, and we've had lots of guests this morning, but...
We certainly have. All kind of going around the Conscious Living Expo. It's been very interesting. There's been a massive influx of conscious living people. And we're joined by Lubomir Dimitrov, and we're talking about astrology. Now, we're talking a little bit off air. Now, for those of us who don't know, the difference between astrology and astronomy.
Okay.
Because they are very different, aren't they?
Nowadays they are very different, but if you go back in times, for example, if you go more than 2,000-3,000 years ago, they were actually one science, because there were no much difference between the spiritual teachings, between the belief system and astronomy as it is today. Eventually what happened later on, as people become more and more materialistic and they start disbelieving a lot of the things, they split this into two streams, and now we have astronomy on one hand and astrology on the other. Astronomy is studying the trajectories of the planets, their orbits, rotation, the distance between the Earth and the planets, what is the chemical composition, physical composition, etc., etc. Astrology, on the other hand, is not so much preoccupied about the physical composition of the planets, but we are stepping on the actual position of the planets, and I have astrology software, which is a professional package which costs more than $1,000 and tells me with the extraordinary accuracy the actual position of all the planets. But at the same time, I'm not so much interested in what is the chemical composition of that planet. I'm interested of what energy is emanated from this planet and how they affect us on a mental level, on spiritual level, on emotional level, and so on.
Sure. Well,
So
there
this
you
is
go.
basically the difference between astronomy and astrology, really.
Now, I mean, the interesting was I also another comment I made off air because I, as I've mentioned several times, I listen to the BBC News a lot, and there was a report a few months ago where they actually did a study of 10,000 people, and they did surveys, and there was questions, and there was analysts in an attempt to disprove the world of astronomy and astrology, if that's at all possible, and they thought that they had. Did you actually hear about the
Yes,
study?
I actually did, yes.
And it was interesting, and the comment you made is like, I guess it's like religion. Can you prove it, disprove it? But do you feel that you've always kind of struggled for legitimacy in the eyes of the mass media? Because a lot of people don't take it very seriously.
Well, the people who don't take it very seriously are the people who know very little about it.
Sure.
And it is always the case. I mean, if you don't know much about something, the first reaction is it's either not true, or there is no proof about it.
Sure.
Now there have been thousands and thousands, if not millions, of books written about astrology. One of the brightest minds in our times, in ancient times, have been written things about astrology and books about astrology. If you go in any church, you will see almost in every church a zodiac somewhere over there. So basically, although the church today is saying that there is no scientific ground for astrology, etc., like that, but actually astrology is operating on a scientific ground. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, let's take the science as it operates today. Okay, how the scientists are actually proving one law or another. They just make a statement. Okay, they first make an observation, make a statement, and then they actually have to prove it. So if this statement actually always repeats under the same circumstances, that's formulated like a law. In the same fashion have been formulated the first law of Newton, the second law of Newton, the gravity, etc., etc., right? So because it's always repeated and it's always with the same gravitational force, it's described like law. Now, ancient people, starting from something like 5,000-6,000 years ago, and probably even more, we just don't have the proof before that because there were no written evidence from those times. What they did is they observed the planetary movement, and they observed that when, for example, the sun is traveling through certain segment of the zodiac, which is, let's say, Libra, all the babies which are born during this time exhibit certain characteristic. But in the split second, when, for example, this planet moves to the neighboring sign of Scorpio, the babies born from this moment onwards exhibit completely different characteristics, which are pertaining to the following sign. And so that has been observed for thousands and thousands of years. We have an enormous data which is supporting this, and we know that people which are born under one sign have certain type of characteristics, and people born under different sign have different types of characteristics. Now, the only difference is most people know their sun sign, and that's it. They don't know all the other elements which are in the chart. And that is what makes the difference. We cannot divide all the billions of people around the globe just into 12 signs.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. You have to take into consideration the rising sign or the ascendant. We have to take into consideration the moon sign as well, Venus sign, Mars sign, and all the other planet signs.
So really, we're only getting a fraction of the story.
We're just getting less than 1% of the story when we read, for example, what it says in the tabloid newspaper that all Virgos today will have a wonderful day and all Leos will have a crappy day. All right, that is so just not scientific. That's nothing. It's just based on the sun alone. Okay, all these people, if for example they come and see a professional astrologer, all right, like myself or somebody else, they will see the enormous difference, because then they will learn what is their rising sign. That will give them the psychological motivation. What is their moon sign? That will give them their instinctual reaction in situation. They will give them their emotional responses in situation. Then they will see their Venus sign, which will mean how they will relate to other people, how they will develop in their close relationships. Mars sign, physical energy, and so on and so on. Then they will see the house positions of these planets as well, because we also have 12 astrological houses. So how many combinations so far? And then they can see the aspects between them, which can be positive and negative, and you have a whole bunch of aspects, which are about 15 aspects. And so if you take
I've never heard it described so scientifically. This is crazy.
Well, it's described by scientists.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, so if you take all these factors into consideration, you will see that there are millions and millions of factors. And if, for example, somebody goes and see a professional astrologer and he calculates the chart based on the time of birth, place of birth, and date of birth, then you will have a unique picture which never repeats. So that's why two people never have two charts the same. Never, ever.
So really, these star signs you read in the TV guide and the thing,
crock.
It's really just
very
entertainment.
general.
Yeah.
Very general indeed. So if you really want to know more about yourself, just there are websites which you can go and calculate your chart for free, like astrodentist, for example, .com. But the thing is, then you will see your chart, you will see the graph over there. But how to interpret that is actually the most important part of the process. So that's why I always advise people to come and see a professional astrologer. If people want to know more about it, they can log into my webpage, which is a very comprehensive webpage. It has a lot of information about it. It's www.lubomir.name. Lubomir is spelled Lubomir.name, N-A-M-E. That's it.
Well, there you go. Well, we're going to come back.
Yeah, we are. I'm just trying to take it all in. It's like, whoa. Michael and Sharon, and it's just past 11:30. You're back on the Monday Bite with Michael and Sharon, and we have been talking to Lubomir Dimitrov.
Yes, Lubomir Dimitrov. That's
yes,
right.
About astrology.
All things astrology, exactly. Engineer turned astrologist. Now, tell me, Lubomir, a lot of people think, we've always talked about the scientific basis for astrology and for astronomy. Now, a lot of people would, I guess, it can appear to be art. It can appear to be science, and some people take a much more artistic approach to it. Some people, obviously yourself, take a much more scientific approach to it. Where does it sit, do you think?
Well, it's probably a very good amalgamation between both. It's actually partially scientific and partially artistic as well. It is the same thing, like, for example, 10 people will go and see the same movie, and then you ask them, what did you see? And they will tell you 10 different stories.
That's true.
Their stories will revolve around the same plot. They're not going to change it. If, for example, somebody has died over there, they're not going to tell you that he didn't. But they will tell you with the different words. And the same thing is with a lot of other sciences, like, for example, medicine science. You go to 2 or 3 different doctors and you show them the same x-ray, and they will tell you 2 or 3 different versions. So it's what is happening is, once you tell the time of birth, the place of birth and the date of birth, the computer software, the astrology software will always calculate the same chart.
Like the raw data.
Yeah, so if the data is all correct, the 3 different astrologers, or 4, whatever you want to consult, they will see the same data, they will see the same chart. Now, the interpretation of the chart is where the art part comes from. Now, one astrologer may have a really very nice way of expressing himself, and he can tell you the things in one way. Somebody else can be really very bold and say, oh, look, don't bother, go to the bank tomorrow because you're not going to be alive, or something like that. And you just go and shoot yourself. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that everybody will look at the same chart, and then how they interpret the chart, that's where the artistic part comes from it. And that's why a lot of people say astrology is not a science, but it's an art. But I will argue exactly the same with all the other sciences as well.
Well, it makes sense. It does make sense.
I mean, you have some laws, some strict laws which are cast in stone, written down, but you have many other laws which are not. Even today, I mean, for example, take the nuclear particles, all right? It depends on if somebody is observing the process or not. They depend, their state, their actual position depends on the emotional state of the observer. So where is the scientific part there? Although we have a multi-billion-dollar equipment which is actually built up to scientifically study these particles, and again, it depends on the human factor too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a very interesting point that you do raise, because at the end of the day, it is, it's what you do with the information. You can have, as I said, you access the data is there, but then. With the doctors, perfect example. How many times have we all known people who've gone to one doctor and gone to another doctor, given a completely different medication, completely different diagnostic process, and etc., etc., etc.
And yet there are certain things which are, certain rules around which we can revolve. Like, for example, we know that somebody who has a lot of planets into Earth signs, they will be very practical, down to earth, and very grounded. If people have, for example, a lot of planets into air signs, they will be very intellectual, and they will.
That'd be me, of course.
Well, people working in the media.
Me and my air.
Yeah, well, people working in the media, normally they have a lot of airs,
Hey.
plants in the air science. Then fire, for example, means enthusiasm and a lot of zest for life and go and do things. And
Fiery
water,
air.
yeah, and water obviously will be emotions, intuitions, imagination, and all sorts of things. So, if, for example, you see somebody who has 3 or 4 or 5 or more planets into one particular element, straight away you already can say these things. This is very scientific. There is not much. This is not a rocket science, you know. So everybody, what I want to emphasize over here is that everybody can learn astrology.
Yeah.
Absolutely everybody. You don't need to be psychic, all right. Although a lot of astrologers are combining a little bit of psychic abilities with scientific abilities, and maybe I'm one of them as well. But what I'm saying is, you don't have to be psychic in order to study astrology. All you need is just a little bit more persistent and perseverance, because if you think that you can sit down and study all this just for few hours and just move on, that's not going to happen. The courses which I'm giving, for example, for people who come to my courses, they last for 10 weeks, and then the advanced course is another 10 weeks, and then the esoteric course is another 10 weeks.
Oh,
and
wow.
after they go through all this, they say, we now start understanding a little bit more about astrology.
So this thing, I guess the thing that kind of appeals to me, what you said, is that this isn't like Kabbalah. It isn't one of those flash in the pan religions that came out of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's got historical roots that go back centuries.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not talking.
Their
Exactly.
basis. The
Exactly.
basis.
No Scientology here. We're talking centuries, you know, upon centuries. And so really, you know, and I just said it's mathematical, it's scientific, it's
That's right. You have to bear in mind that if you go back in time more than, let's say, 500, 600 years, you will see that actually science and religion were very closely amalgamated. There were no difference.
Some of the greatest scientists in the world were monks.
Exactly, and if you go even back in time, you will see that the actual priests were the one who were also the astrologers. So there were no much difference. But today we have split them into, as we said, into 2 separate streams. But even like this, astrologers don't have to be religious or don't have to be spiritual. Although often the case is that whoever starts studying astrology becomes more spiritual at the end.
Well, I think it's only been really quite a recent thing in the past couple hundred years where people have this whole separation of church and state. It wasn't like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. It hasn't always been this way.
Exactly.
Now, we'll be right back on the Monday Bite. We'll be wrapping up very soon, so get those calls in, 94721911, or they can SMS us, Michael.
Absolutely. Text the word followed by your comments or questions to 199-DANCE. That's 199-32623. Please put that in your speed dial. Yeah, why not? That, of course, is 55 cents.
But we do have a guest with us in the studio, and we'll be wrapping it up very shortly.
Yeah. We've been talking about all things astrology with Lubomir Dimitrov, a very, I guess, very well, if nothing else, very well read and very well spoken astrologist. It's been very educational.
Yes, it has.
Now we did kind of touch on a little bit of the prediction side of things. Now you were kind of mentioning off air that in terms of the prediction side of astrology, it isn't actually what it's about. That isn't the basis of the practice of the art of astrology.
Well, a lot of people think that astrology is all about predictions, but it is the same thing to say that, for example, 80% of it is self-knowledge.
Sure.
Actually, know yourself. Man, know yourself. Coming back to exactly the same thing. Now, if you think about it, like, for example, scientists today make a lot of predictions too. All right,
this is true.
Like, for example, do you watch the news and see what the weather is going to be tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And you say this is based on a scientific data,
And
right?
they're never right.
Definitely based on scientific data. Where was the sunshine on Sunday?
Exactly.
Where was the 31 degrees?
Exactly. All right. So that is their type of predictions. All right. Then we have, for example, other type of predictions. For example, agriculturals will come and say, for example, this year we predict after 6 months we're going to have such and such tons of crop. All right. Where these predictions are, on what base they are made from? They know the type of the soil. They know the type of the crop that has been put over there. They know the average rainfall. They know the climate in the place, etc. So they make predictions. Well, astrology is based exactly on the same thing. I mean, if we know that in the chart of the person we have a lot of planets in certain signs that they make certain aspects to each other, etc., etc., we can tell absolutely everything about this person. We can tell, for example, what will be his attitude towards love and relationship, what will be his attitude toward parents, his children when he will have some eventually one day, so on and so on. And on the basis of this information, we can make predictions, isn't it? But it's only 20% predictions and 80% self-knowledge. And now, if, for example, a person studies himself more into depth, then they can change a little bit these events which are going to happen in the future, because in the chart, certain positive and negative aspects are outlined over there. If, for example, a person doesn't like some of the negative aspects, he can work on himself. It may take him a long time. Sometimes it takes years to work on certain aspects, but eventually they can get there and they can effectively change the events which are happening to
So
them.
the idea is you get as much information as you can about what it is in this world that affects you, what it is that makes you the way you are.
Actually,
All
not in
these-
the world, what it is inside you.
Inside you.
Because what it is inside you is forming the type of perception you're forming about the world outside you.
And once you know these things, then you can start to understand them, and through your understanding of them, make changes.
Exactly.
Positive and negative.
And that's how they, people can become a real master of their own fate. Because at the moment they think that they're masters of their own fate, but they are not. If they don't read about themselves, if they don't objectively see what elements they're made from, and everybody, I'll tell you from this experience, I have done thousands of charts, everybody has some downfalls, okay? As everybody has some positive
That makes sense.
traits, okay?
Yeah.
So when people, for example, they come to me, some of them say, okay, tell me everything which is good about me, but I don't want to know the bad things. And I'm telling them, sorry, but you're on the wrong address. You have to go to another astrologer. Because I either will tell you everything what I can see about yourself, I can tell you everything positive what I see in you, but I also will tell you everything what I think is negative, so you can overcome your shortnesses. Otherwise, what is the
And that's
point?
all
I
the
will
good
tell
stuff
you.
gets better.
I mean, otherwise, what is the point? I'll tell you, you're such a wonderful person. Okay, give me $75 an hour. Thank you very much.
I can do that for free.
You know, I mean,
could do that.
There's no point of doing this. Exactly, the whole point of astrology is exactly this. People know themselves more, and they can change themselves a little bit, so they can effectively change the effects and events which are happening in their lives.
Sure.
Now, you will be at the Conscious Living Expo
Yes,
over
I
the
will be,
weekend.
yes.
Well, Thursday to Sunday.
Thursday to Sunday.
For those who are interested, when can they come down and see you?
My stand is R10, Readers 10. I'll be giving readings over there for people, and I also will have a workshop which will be held on Saturday from 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock, and the topic will be Past Lives Revealed by Astrology.
Very nice. Well,
That's
thank you
very
very
cool.
much for coming in. It was really interesting. My
I'll be
whole
at
perception
the
of-
I'll be at the Conscious Living Expo on Thursday or Friday.
Yep, and also there's a website, Michael.
Yes, absolutely. Lubomir.name. That's LUBOMIR.name. And that's going to take you straight to Lubomir's astrology or a website. And that covers, I'm looking at it right now. It covers everything: astrology, spiritual science, numerology, his articles, the interviews, the photo album. It's far reaching. It's really easy to read as well. Really easy to kind of work through. And so I highly recommend anybody who's been interested in anything Lubomir said today to definitely check out his website. As I said, Lubomir.name. And also, don't forget the obviously the expo is going to be huge.
Yeah, so if you have time between Thursday and Sunday, go check it out. Now, Mike and I will be right back to sign off, but we've got some Killers coming up and Hilltop Hoods, Sleepy Brown,
Nice.
plenty more. Plenty more.